Welcome to the Cult is King podcast. I'm your host, Rambling Bones, joined as ever by my co-host, the Duke.
Hello.
And Duke, what is it that we do here?
Well, we go through cult movies. Those movies that you may not have seen that fell by the wayside or weren't successful but kind of found other audiences later. And, what kind of movie did we watch today? What did we watch?
Well, you should know. We watched it together.
I'm trying to set you up, you turd.
We watched The Monster Squad, and it was just like I remembered it. Nothing changed at all.
That's good. That probably shouldn't happen. All right, so you want to go ahead and give us the synopsis?
No.
Okay, well then I'll do it.
No, I'll go. So the plot of The Monster Squad, a little brief synopsis, is, 100 years ago, or at least 100 years ago from the 80s, Abraham Van Helsing tried to destroy Dracula by using this magic amulet to open a portal to limbo. But as the rolling text at the beginning says, they blew it. And 100 years later, present day, Dracula is back and trying to find this amulet and destroy it, while our main hero, or at least the standout character amongst a pretty big cast, Sean, and his little monster club are trying to find the amulet and destroy Dracula with it before Dracula can destroy it.
But unfortunately, Dracula has some friends.
Yes, Dracula has the Gill Man, the Wolf Man, the Mummy, and Frankenstein's monster, who, of course, is a turncoat, but Dracula and all of his monsters are, well, they're doing bad stuff, and Sean and his little club of misfits have to stop them. There's kind of a lot of characters in this movie, but...
Which is funny to me because the movie itself is not very long.
No, I think the movie's not 90 minutes, is it?
No, in fact, I wrote it down. The movie only clocked in at 82 minutes from start to finish.
I know that they chopped 13 minutes out of it because I think the studio didn't want it to run longer than 90 minutes.
No, they cut quite a bit out. I think all of the monster stuff is pretty much intact, but there was a subplot. They kind of set it up between Sean's parents where they're having marital trouble, kind of as a subplot, but I think most of that got cut.
My one thing I'll say from the start is that this movie, I think, could have been longer, and I think the story elements, they aren't necessarily jumping to conclusions or just like making broad leaps of logic, but they really move the plot along very quickly, but it doesn't necessarily, for example, at the very beginning, Sean gets Abraham Van Helsing's, journal. Why he has it, it's just very convenient that his mom happens to give it to him, and then Sean deciding that there are monsters that have come back. There's a reason he thinks that, and it's explained in the movie, but it's like, really? You think monsters are back and only you and your friends can stop them? That's the conclusion you drew immediately?
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with this conclusion, but he could have worked up to it a little bit.
Things could have been built more than just, all right, I've determined that there are monsters now despite having seen 0 monsters before, and we've got to stop them.
But other than that, as far as the story goes, like I said, this is rare because usually we're talking about how movies, could have cut this or cut that. But no, this really could have just having a little more time to let some of the plot elements breathe.
No, that would have definitely helped.
But what's left in is pretty good.
This movie, well, when I was looking at it and how people reviewed it, everyone was comparing it to everything else. But I think a lot of these comparisons are fair in that it's a bit like The Goonies. It's a bit like E.T., It kind of reminded me a lot of Stranger Things, but that's mostly because, I don't know, Stranger Things is very new and definitely playing off of that 80s nostalgia, while this movie almost feels like it's hitting the nostalgia note, but for people who are in the 80s.
Well, right. And one thing, and this kind of ties into the monster design, is the whole idea was this was kind of a bit of a love letter to the old Universal monsters. Granted, they didn't actually have the rights to those, which is why I think originally they wanted the suits to be tailored more towards like looking like more faithful recreations of the Universal monster makeup and stuff, but because they didn't have the rights, they a lot of things got subtly changed here and there.
Because all these characters are public domain. Well, except for the creature from the Black Lagoon, he is not technically public domain, but you can't copyright having fish people.
No,
So
but you can copyright makeup,
yes,
and that was one of the things they ran into, especially since, I mean, even though they're old movies, even at that time, Universal kind of closely guards their monsters.
well, I believe that the makeup, like the classic Frankenstein design, just recently, like last 5 years, I think it finally, the copyright on that lifted.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of, I think, you talked about comparing it to other things was interesting because our director, Fred Decker, so he was the writer and the director for this movie, or one of the writers, I should say. He kind of, when he was working on this project, had watched, he was wanting to do like a Little Rascals project, but he was at home one night watching Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, and he was like, well, what if I crossed these two streams here?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when you think about it, that is kind of what you have here, but for the 80s.
I have a feeling that Fred Decker is a very nostalgic person because one thing I also read is that directly after this, he wanted to do an adaptation of Johnny Quest.
Yes.
But because this movie flopped, that got shut down.
No, this movie flopped hard, and I think part of the reason for that, and I guess, like I said, I really enjoyed this movie, but another point of criticism that wouldn't necessarily bother everybody, but I think hurt it a lot, is that its tone is kind of mixed for who it's aimed for. In the sense that this is definitely a movie that would, I mean, anybody can enjoy this movie, but wouldn't you agree that this seems more targeted towards kids, like older kids?
So, yeah, the main thing I saw a lot of people suggesting was this movie got a PG-13 rating and wasn't properly distributed by like a company that actually knows how to handle a
Yes.
PG-13. And so like Lost Boys had just come out prior, and so people are like, well, teenagers are going to go and watch Lost Boys, but this movie Monster Squad it's too mature for little kids, but not mature enough for teenagers. So who is this for?
Yeah, because, I mean, the plot elements are pretty good, for kids and stuff, but then there's a lot of like raunchier jokes and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of language, a lot of edgier humor, and there's also some stuff in there that kind of took me by surprise in the writing. Like you mentioned earlier, how Sean's parents are like going through a divorce. The movie reminded me of Ed Wood, in that in the movie Ed Wood, it's like his life but through rose-colored glasses, but every now and then like moments of reality, harsh, serious stuff creeps in. And this movie is a fun kid romp with monsters, but every now and then, like, really dark stuff enters. One of the people that they befriend his name is literally Scary German Guy in the credits, but it's revealed that he was like a Holocaust victim.
Yes, I remember that.
It's just like a single shot, and I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but it's just really,
it is a little jarring.
It kind of takes you off guard, and then the subplot with the parents getting divorced. I mean, there's literally a part where the mom has packed her bags and they are by the door. She is about to hit the road, and I'm sure that more of would have been played on that had that 13 minutes that got cut stayed in. But just little moments like that where it's oddly serious.
Yes, and then you have, like really silly moments like one of my favorite little gags is at one point in one of the members of the Monster Squad is a little younger than the rest of them, and he writes a letter that he mails that says, "Dear Army guys, there are monsters, signed Eugene." And then later, after they defeat all the monsters, the tanks and stuff roll in, and it's like, "Where's Eugene?"
Well, yeah, let's talk about the kids, actually.
Okay.
Now we're here, because there's a lot of kids, and, for a Monster Squad, I think we both can agree only one of them is really useful.
Well, I get two. I'd say two.
Two, yeah. So
Sean kind of drives things, and then at one point they befriend a kid who's a little older than the rest of them.
the
Who's
cool junior high
the
kid.
cool junior high kid. He's got his leather jacket and he smokes and stuff, Rudy. But not only does he join them, but he also then carries the team.
Yeah, Rudy is a case of like, why does he want to join the Monster Squad? Because there's literally no reason. He just
Well,
like, I want to join.
for one, he's a decent guy. He stands up for Horace earlier when Horace was being bullied. But two, when you live in a neighborhood and you don't have, endless video games and stuff, you got to find some sort of fun. And if that involves kids who are a few younger than you talking about monsters, what the heck?
Yeah, what else are you gonna do? But then you have Horace, who is like sort of like the scared fat kid, and he he redeems himself at the end by straight up killing the Gill Man
With a shotgun.
He just blows him away. In fact, I think Gillman of all the monsters probably does the least.
Yeah, he got the short end of the stick because he might have gotten the coolest suit job.
Yeah, he looks really great.
The Gillman suit was worked on by Matt Rose and Steve Wang, and it ended up making, I think this movie, during the time this was being filmed toward the end while this was in production, another movie was being made that would be very big, Predator. And based on their work on the Gillman suit, they would later go on to help design the Predator. Because, once again, Stan Winston's company was hired for that.
This movie is a case of there's a lot of people who keep showing up in each other's projects. Like Fred Dekker and Shane Black keep doing stuff. Shane Black is in Predator. Stan Winston did a handful of... did the Predator and other Shane Black projects, if I remember correctly. The mom in this movie is in Lethal Weapon, which is written by Shane Black, so there's just a lot of cross-pollination here.
There is. Well, and Fred Dekker was kind of interesting. Well, we're still talking about the kids.
Yeah,
we'll get back to
Fred Dekker. But
so we talked about Horace.
Eugene is the youngest apart from Phoebe, and Eugene, apart from sending a letter to army guys, mostly just says "Mummy in my closet," and Gillman ate my Twinkie.
Yeah, he's kind of an unofficial member. Yeah.
He had like cool anime posters in his room though.
Yeah, and he had Robotech pajamas. I'd kill for those.
Yeah, he's pretty cool.
I mean, in my size, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they made Robotech pajamas in my size. And then there's Sean.
Oh,
or not Sean.
There's Patrick and
Patrick.
there's Phoebe.
Yes. So, and Patrick is just like Sean's best friend, but his main quality is that he has an older sister that Rudy likes to peek at. So
he's like normal. He doesn't not contribute, but he doesn't really contribute either. He's just sort of,
like I said,
he's just there.
Sean moves the plot along, and Rudy solves the problems.
Rudy solves the problems. And then Phoebe is Sean's little sister.
And she might be like the cutest little girl they could have possibly found for this.
And her main thing is she befriends Frankenstein's monster.
Played by Tom Noonan of Manhunter fame.
Yes. Apparently, I think this was right after Manhunter, and Tom Noonan's career was starting to do very well, and it was either this or Near Dark, and he chose this because of the lighter tone. But I think, if I remember correctly, Catherine Bigelow wanted him so bad that she showed up to set to try to figure out maybe we can work out you doing both films.
Hey, if you're an actor, I bet that's a good problem to have, especially if like I said, I don't think he was... Did he do much before Manhunter? I want to say that either launched or revitalized.
I think it launched.
Well, and he knocked it out of the park in that one, so...
Yeah, but Phoebe befriends Frankenstein's monster, and she also is the one to cast Dracula back into limbo.
Yes, you see, one of the things that you have to do is you have to read this long, German incantation over the talisman, but it has to be done at a certain time, and it has to be done by a virgin. Originally, they were going to have Sean's older sister, or not Sean, Patrick. Yes,
Patrick's
I'm sorry.
Sister.
Patrick's older sister do it, only to discover that she is no longer a virgin.
Yeah, in edgier jokes in this movie.
Right. But scary German guy who is neither scary.
But he's
He
like,
is German,
yeah,
but
he
he's
is
not
German.
scary.
He's not scary.
Helps her read it, and Dracula is sucked into limbo.
Scary. I don't know if you recognized him, but Leonardo Simoneau, I believe is how it's pronounced. Did you recognize him from a little thing called V?
I did not, but I do remember when I was looking things up that he was in V, because I was like, oh, I love V.
Yes, no, I remember him distinctly from V. He was also in Dune and Moonstruck with Nicolas Cage right before Vampire's Kiss.
Wow, see, look, everything is a circle, man.
We're at that point now where we've done enough movies where everything is connected.
Well, and we've done a good job. We've kind of talked a lot about the characters and actors, but really the star of the show, in my opinion, is Dracula. And you'll have to forgive me if I mispronounce this. He was played by Duncan Reger.
You know, that's good enough for me. I also don't know how to pronounce it.
He was also in V. But he was interesting because he was originally like an Olympic contender in boxing, and then later went on to be a Shakespearean actor.
Well, I definitely see the Shakespearean actor part of his performance. He's pretty great. Originally, though, Liam Neeson was a possible for the role of Dracula.
And as you can probably guess, at the time, Liam Neeson wasn't a known quantity quite yet. So
I don't think I know when Liam Neeson actually became a star.
I don't know. I know that he started cropping up around like movies in the 80s because I know he was also in Kroll.
Yeah,
But
Darkman, his best performance ever.
Darkman was really good. We'll probably cover Darkman at some point.
But no, Dracula is definitely the best part of this movie. Like I think my favorite part of the entire movie is the little girl is reading the incantation and Dracula is just walking towards her, and you've got all of these cops who just like one at a time keep trying to get to him.
That one is funny though because they're going at it. Like one of them's got like a billy club and they're all like trying to wail on him.
But the thing is like Dracula does not stop. He just like takes them out one by one while moving, like focus completely unbroken.
And the choreography on that was great.
No, it looked really cool.
Like it looks like he's beating the crap out of him, not like he's just going through the motion, but at the same time he has to do that while being pure just completely unbothered and moving forward. Killed it.
Wolfman was also a standout. It was also on the case of, we mentioned earlier, serious moments in this movie. Whenever the Wolfman is in his human form, it's kind of heavy.
Yeah.
Like when he finally dies, I think he just says thank you. And
yes.
It's like, man, that's a little dark.
It sure is. Well, and the transformation scenes were good.
Yeah, they're not quite American Werewolf, but this movie I'm sure didn't quite have. Well, I'm pretty sure all of the budget for American Werewolf went into that transformation.
Well, and to be honest, though, they were very smart with the effects. Rather than, like American Werewolf was able to show quite a bit. But here they would just kind of suggest things. Like you'd start to see some hairy hands, and then they'd cut to something ripping and then stuff, and then you'd have the Wolfman. But they did it in such a way that your mind just kind of fills in the gaps as if you'd seen it.
Yeah, and did you recognize who the human playing the human, like, who the human werewolf was?
I thought he looked familiar, but I did not recognize him.
Uncle Rico.
Is that really Uncle
Dynamite.
Rico?
I had to like look twice, and I was like, man, that is Uncle Rico.
That's awesome.
I believe his name is John Grice. It's Gries. So however you want to pronounce that. I'm sure he's done other things other than Napoleon Dynamite, but
yeah, Monster Squad.
Yeah, Monster Squad. I will say Napoleon Dynamite is probably what he'll be remembered for over Monster Squad.
You know what, though? I love Napoleon Dynamite, too. So, just take it.
Yeah, but the Wolfman, probably the most famous line from this movie, is Wolfman Scott Nards.
Yes, at one point they kick the Wolfman in the nards. However, we learned something very important about the Wolfman. Early on, they're debating if there's another way to kill the Wolfman other than shooting him with a silver bullet. And at one point in this movie, he gets dynamite tucked into his pants and pushed out a window and explodes. And then he completely, reassembles.
Yeah, that was a case of, he is a bloody, his lower half is missing.
His
Just
limbs are everywhere.
there's like blood and guts and flesh everywhere, and he just starts to reform. It's not graphic like in Hellraiser, when that guy starts to reform, but it
But
was
by this movie's standards, it's the goriest part.
for this movie. Yeah, it was really
It
gory.
was also well done.
Yeah, I do like that setup of them arguing. "Oh, of course, there's another way to kill a werewolf," and they're like, it's literally like what kids would do. I remember being a little kid and it's like, oh, vampire. Well, if you dropped a nuke on Dracula, but apparently, if you drop at least a bomb on Wolfman, it will not be enough.
Nope, you gotta use the silver bullet. Well, I like too. One of my things that I also found endearing was just the kids' conversations about monsters at some point, like whether or not Wolfman can drive a car or all this stuff before they run into the monsters. And I'm just like, this is the kind of thing I used to think about.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is definitely a movie for monster kids. Like, if you grew up with the monsters and just, were into that, you're gonna love this movie, like, regardless of your age.
Yeah, no, I think this movie hits the nostalgia points if you miss the 80s despite having not actually lived in the 80s
Well,
or
it even has an honest to goodness 80s montage.
oh yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It's mostly Rudy doing all the work.
It's the other kids, doing God knows what while Rudy's making everything in shop class while it's going, rock it till you drop.
Yes, let's talk about the music very briefly.
Yeah, there was just a few notes I had on that. I remember the songs were created. There was two main songs, and they were created specifically for this movie. There was a "Rocket Till You Drop," and then there was the Monster Squad rap.
Yeah, and that was by Michael Sembello, I believe is how you pronounce it. And you've most likely heard the song "Maniac." It was in Flashdance.
She's a maniac, maniac.
Yeah,
There you go, now
exactly.
you know.
There you go.
My
That's
music
beautiful.
career is gonna, after this podcast, that's what's gonna launch me.
That or the AI covers.
Oh no.
His music's actually in a lot of stuff. Cocoon, Independence Day, Gremlins. I will say, as far as the trope of the song written for the 80s movie, the Monster Squad rap is it's not that great. I'm not gonna lie.
No, but I think "Rocket Till You Drop's" a banger.
Rocket Till You Drop is pretty good, but when I think, oh, this song specifically written, for a movie, Monster Squad rap, it's got the name. It's the most, applicable.
It leans into it a little too much.
Yeah. It's not quite Dream Warriors by Dokken
Or Pet
Cemetery.
Sematary. Ah,
Yeah. Or even Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which is maybe the best.
yeah, that's kind of the high bar for, movie theme songs.
Or Green Slime.
I really, we'll have to cover Green Slime. They've probably not seen that one.
Yeah, it's pretty
That's
good.
a winner.
That is a winner. But yeah, and then apart from the music by Michael Sembello, the rest of the music was done by Bruce Broughton, and this movie's soundtrack, apart from the two written songs, is really good. Actually, I think I forget what it was, but there was like a magazine publication that came out around the time that said this movie's got great soundtrack.
Well, and it does, and it's not one that necessarily the first time I watched it that I really popped out at me, other than it just set the mood appropriately. But watching the movie again, the music is definitely one of the other high points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. Other than those 2 points, I really don't have much else to say about the music.
No, me neither.
Other than, again, Rock Until You Drop is good.
Yeah, you probably won't be downloading Monster Squad on a rap on YouTube or iTunes or whatever.
Yeah. We did mention how this movie was a failure and, of course, has a cult status now. There is an entire documentary. I'm pretty sure the documentary is less about the making of this movie and more about it just having cult status, but the documentary is, of course, called Wolfman's Got Nards.
Well, of course it would be.
I cannot attest to the quality of this documentary other than I believe it has the majority of the actors who are still alive in it, And I think it's more or less just fans talking about the impact of the movie on their lives. But
Well, and like I said, this is definitely one that gained momentum through the years.
mhm.
And it's not that the critics hated this movie or anything. There were mixed reviews. Generally, people really liked the Dracula performance. But I think it was just a mixture of just being poorly distributed and just kind of being in that awkward PG-13 area.
I'm sure if you've looked at like an 80s lineup of like movies released,
Or even monster movies.
it's always like, wow, there was nothing but quality coming out all year round every single year. So if you are not the top tier, you sort of
It's
you
kind of
sort of
like
get buried. So this
it's
movie,
easy to get lost in the shuffle.
yeah. Oh, we sort of off and on talked about actors, but I did want to mention two more actors. The one I wanted to mention first is Jack Gwillem, who is Abraham Van Helsing. Now, Van Helsing is at the beginning of the movie, and then at the very end of the movie, when they open the rift, he like grabs Dracula and then gives him a thumbs up.
As he drags him into limbo.
Duke, I don't know if you got this in your head, but it made me think of the end of Happy Gilmore, where like Tubbs, Abraham Lincoln, and the crocodile are like clapping their hands in the
Yes.
sky. And I think one of them gives a thumbs up. Just ethereal Van Helsing giving a thumbs up.
He drags Dracula to limbo.
Yeah, but he's interesting. He's Poseidon in Clash of the Titans.
You know, I've seen Clash of the Titans a million times, and I never thought about that.
He is in Jason and the Argonauts, Patton, Lawrence of Arabia. I think of all the actors in this movie, he's probably got the most accolades going for him.
Which is funny because it's such a bit part.
yeah, no, it's
Like, the initial scene is an important scene, but after the first couple minutes of the movie, you don't see him except for the few seconds that he grabs Dracula.
yeah. The other actor I wanted to mention was Stefan Macht, who is the dad in this movie, and I didn't really want to mention him because he's in a lot of great stuff, but because if you are into cult films, you might recognize him from Graveyard Shift, Trancers 4, and Amityville 1992. It's About Time.
Wow, those are kind of the bottom barrel cult movies.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like he's really good in this movie. Like I think the dad, apart from Rudy, who I've obviously made it clear I like Rudy a lot in this movie, but the dad he's very likable. I think he's probably the best written character of everyone in the film. I don't.
Yeah, well, and it's good because even though they're kind of doing that divorce, it's not like there's a real bad guy. His job gets in the way, but it's kind of cool because him and Sean come together to kind of help fight the monsters at the end, which is kind of a bit of a cool arc. But he definitely comes off as that cool dad.
Yeah. So he's probably the best written character, and I just thought you guys should know that he is in some real dog crap.
Well,
that we will talk about eventually.
If this podcast runs long enough, I don't even know how we could possibly get through all the movies I want to talk about.
Next Halloween we'll do Trancers 1 through 4.
I don't think anybody will hold us to that, but we'll see.
I'm not going to hold us to that.
I did want to talk a little bit about Fred Dekker because he's kind of an interesting guy.
Yes, yeah.
He's so I want to say most of his bigger career between writing and directing was writing. Mm-hmm. But despite the fact that he shows up in some notable places, his filmography is not very large.
No.
But the movies he does do are notable. For instance, in addition to this movie, he wrote Night of the Creeps, RoboCop 3, and had a writing credit on The Predator. Not the good one, the one that came out in 2018, the bad one. But he also directed Night of the Creeps and RoboCop 3, but I think those plus this one are the only 3 movies he directed.
I think he directed a few more than that, but RoboCop 3 and Night of the Creeps and then this are like the height. He did write the story for House.
Yes, he did contribute ideas for that, and we're talking about, there's a movie that we're definitely going to cover because it's a personal favorite of the both of ours, called House. You may not have even heard of this movie. It was made in 1986. He also helped with the sequel. And it's kind of a more of a horror movie with a bit of a lighter tone,
Yeah.
kind of like this in some ways, but it's personal favorite. We'll definitely talk about it.
Shane Black is also in Night of the Creeps.
So once again, a lot of cross pollination
yeah,
here.
and I think I know Shane Black directed the third Iron Man movie. I can't remember if Fred Dekker was also possibly involved with that at all, or if that was just all Shane Black. And Shane Black, apart from the stuff that he's written and directed, whenever I hear about like nerd stuff going on, I typically hear about him being involved in some way. Like I mentioned Fred Dekker wanting to do Johnny Quest. Apparently they've been shopping around a Johnny Quest movie for a while, and that's been something, Shane Black worked on. Shane Black also worked on like the Death Note movie, for, like the Netflix one. And by worked on it, I mean there was like a terrible script, and then he tried to fix it, and then they had some other guys come in and completely take whatever he wrote and
throw it out the window. Yeah, that's the kind of case where I would be like, no need to credit me.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there was hardly any of his script left in there, so I don't think there is a credit for it. But he's a name that you will consistently hear pop up. And I mean, he wrote Last Action Hero, and
I mean, and other people who got a lot of work was the Stan Winston special effects company. They're still around.
Stan is unfortunately no longer around.
No, but his company remains, and I believe they teach special effects stuff now, because when I was researching this, they had there's a great article from them, from their website, about the making of Monster Squad.
Oh, that's cool.
And I thought it was interesting too, because I mean, they had a few. It wasn't like everybody working together. They were all split up, working on different monsters and stuff, rigging up the mummy's fingers, which were all worked by like cables. But it used to take like, one of the things they're talking about is like, it used to take like 10 operators for the fingers or something, and now they were able to do it from one controller. There was a lot of innovation going in special effects at the time. But it was interesting though, because even though each monster kind of had its own squad on it, it sounds like Stan actually did a lot of hands-on work, especially with the Frankenstein.
Well, I think I know Stan, like, I think created designs for everything, and then everyone was just sort of like taking his designs and then making them their own.
And if you look at the sketches that Stan did, they turned out almost exactly like what he sketched, and I think he just did an excellent job of. It was funny because they wanted to be as faithful as possible, but as far as taking the monsters and making them their own like they had to, I think resounding success, and the special effects are some of the best part of the movies, as well as the monster suits.
No, Stan Winston, I mean, I'm not surprised that they were doing some major innovation there. Jurassic Park is probably, I think, I mean, I know they did Terminator 2, which is also super big and impressive.
But Jurassic Park's probably their biggest, especially since the Jurassic Park right now franchise is not what it used to be, but still very, very big and still very relevant. I wouldn't be surprised if more people have seen his work through that.
Well, I mean, Jurassic Park, the use of, practical effects, you have, actual dinosaur puppet things, and then you had the, introduction of the CGI effects, but it still looks really good because of Stan Winston's work.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of the 80s, there were cheesy special effects, but a lot of when they were really good, they hold up better even than effects made decades after, just because of that combination of emerging technologies and old techniques.
The scene where the mummy dies is they're driving away in this car, and the mummy is on the back of it, and they take a part of his linen wrapping, attach it to an arrow, and shoot it to a tree. So, of course, he's being unraveled as they're driving away, and just him falling to bits while still going.
And it looks
cool.
It does, because it's like he's like hollow, and there's nothing like but dust inside, which is cool. And that must have been a bear to do, but nowadays they would have used a cheap CGI effect, which would have looked passable, and it wouldn't have been near as memorable.
there is a part where Dracula has been like shot while like mid transformation, so he's this horrible bat man monster puppet, and that's pretty gruesome. I'm sure
Pretty
that was
disturbing.
I'm sure that was kind of a pain to make, but no, Mummy, despite being the least cool of all of the monsters, has one of the coolest ends, while Gilman, being one of the most cool, has like the least cool end.
Well, yeah, because the Mummy really doesn't contribute a whole lot. Because they definitely went for like a slow, decrepit, corpse, which is creepy. He looks very creepy.
He's also a manlet.
Well, he's also around all these jacked monsters. It's not fair.
Well, and I'm sure, age, being 1,000 years old, and you probably get a little
Skin adds a little
small.
height too,
Yeah.
But he doesn't really do much, but just kind of slowly move from place to place. But the Gill Man is like this. He tosses like Frankenstein's casket like it's nothing out of the lake and stuff. But that was one of the things I personally would have liked to have seen more of. They'd left more time, more of the scenes and stuff, is just to see more of the Gill Man, because
Or just more of all of the monsters.
yeah, there was definitely room for more monster hijinks and stuff in here. But like the Gill Man suit looks amazing. He's really cool, but he's just kind of unceremoniously dispatched with a shotgun after doing not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think that about covers everything I have to say about Monster Squad. Do you have any notes that you'd like to add, or anything you missed?
No, I don't think I really have anything else to say. This movie's good, but I don't know if there's really a lot to nitpick here, or...
Yeah, we only have a couple nitpicks, and one of which is just it could be longer, and then just kind of
So some of the writing, just a little bit.
some of the writing could be tweaked. Like I said, some of the raunchy jokes are just kind of strange for who this would be aimed at, but I feel like
I don't know. Part of me, I don't know. I was not a kid in the 80s, so I don't know what life was like, but I don't know. I can't help but feel like kids nowadays hear so much worse.
I'm about to say, if you're letting your
It's
kids,
very, it's like, oh, these are just normal modern children.
well, and that's probably fair enough. I would say, older kids through teenagers, adults would love this movie. I think most people would be entertained by it, and it would be a great pick for Halloween.
Yeah. If you like monster movies, you'll like this one, because it's got a handful of monsters in it.
It's got all the monsters.
It's got all of them, all you could ever want.
Well, it doesn't have as many as Mad Monster Party, but you might find this more palatable.
I'll give it this. I like the Monster Squad rap more than 90% of the music in Mad Monster Party. But moving on, have you selected the next movie?
I have. We're going to choose a movie I think's perfect for Halloween. It's a personal favorite. We're going to watch the original House on Haunted Hill.
That's a good pick.
So stay tuned for that next week. That's definitely, if you're looking for some movies to watch for Halloween, Monster Squad should be on there, and I'd maybe make room for House on Haunted Hill. In the meantime, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, you might leave a like, a comment, or a review, or, you could flame us too. We would be grateful. But thanks for listening. This is a lot of fun to make, and we appreciate those of you who are tuning in.
Yeah, no, thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Keep it Colt.